women, we have the ability to affect change.
Yes.
We don't have to assimilate, show up as exactly who we are.
Welcome to the Island Girls Rock podcast. Here, we honor the stories, voices, and everyday magic of Caribbean women and girls across generations. Let's get into today's conversation. Well. We are on episode 3, season 2 of the Island Girls Rock podcast, and I am so excited about today's guest. And it's not just because she's my cousin. She is a phenomenal island girl, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So let me just tell you a little bit about today's guest. Today, we are joined by Senator Janelle Sarauw, a proud Virgin Islander, educator, and leader who has dedicated her life to serving her community. From the classroom to the legislature, she's been a powerful advocate for young people, culture, and the environment. She's also breaking many barriers, not just through her work, but by showing up authentically. Can I say locks and all? In spaces that haven't always embraced that. We are so excited to have this conversation with her today. So let me officially welcome, and I've asked her, do I need to call you Senator in this conversation? Can you just be my cuz? Can I flick between both of them? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But truly, Senator Janelle Sarauw, welcome. And I know I would have read a bit about you, but please remind the people which islands you rep in.
Oh, so I'm representing St. Thomas, St. John. Good evening, first of all. I'm representing St. Thomas, St. John, St. Croix, Water Island, and the entire Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and what was once Anguilla as part of the Federation. You have to claim them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be it, I think, so far.
You're waving all of those flags.
I am proudly.
I am going to put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot. Which flag you find that you're waving a little higher than the others?
It would naturally be the VI flag.
Okay.
Of the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
Emeralds of the Sea.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Naturally, and then it would be this, the flag that I am very much biased to. Mm-hmm. Would be that red, green, and yellow flag with those 2 stars in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Outlined with the black. Oh, land of beauty.
Oh, yes, it is. A country where peace abounds. Okay.
Yep.
What I love is that there is such a connection between St. Kitts and Nevis and the Virgin Islands, right? So I know that you are very proud to be a Virgin Islander, extremely proud to be a Virgin Islander. And there is that connection between St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Croix and St. Thomas and St. John's and all of that. I want you to share with me what aspects of your Caribbean upbringing you feel have shaped the woman and leader you are today.
I would say we just had a conversation pre this recording about the national heroes being only men. In the Virgin Islands, that's not the case. Our first rebellion was in 1733, Coral Bay St. John. And that rebellion, one of the key figures of that rebellion was Queen Brefu. And Queen Brefu she looked like a man, she dressed like one, I guess, to disguise herself. And Queen Brefu led the 1733 uprising. It was actually the first of its kind in the Caribbean that predates what happened in Haiti. And actually what happened on St. John led to the British slave codes being strengthened because they didn't want any slaves to, I guess, to rebel. So for me, I would say my upbringing in the U.S. Virgin Islands, because we have Queen Brefu, you're taught about the women of the movement. And then we sing a Quilbe song. Quilbe is our national music. And we sing a Quilbe song, Queen Mary, where you going to born? And it speaks about the 4 queens at the labor riots in Fredericksted, 1878, and we call it the fire. today is actually called Contract Day, October 1st. So in my history, and as we pass our Heroes Park, we have Edith Williams, one of our longest educators. Our schools are named after females as well. The Evelyn Marcelli School, Kankari Junior High School. Our high school is named Bertha C. Shelter Junior High. Our other high school is Ivana Eudora Ken. So we have so many images of women in leadership that my leadership, it was normalized that I can be who I want to be. And we refer to our heroes as queens. Talk about Queen Mary, Queen Keziah, Queen Matilda, Queen Agnes, and they're given this level of reverence. Yes. So I noticed, in comparison to a lot of the other Caribbean islands where patriarchy is so deeply rooted, in the Virgin Islands, my leadership, my heroes look like me, look like African women with all of this shape and, and big lips, big nose. Yes. And I'm like, that was my image of like what beauty and strength. So that part of my Caribbean upbringing will probably be the most, that would have shaped me the most. And of course, going back and forth to St. Kitts and my granddad and to Nevis with my grandma. Just watching, how countries like St. Kitts was able to transition from a very much colonized state to a post-colonial state. And that's something that we haven't achieved in the Virgin Islands. We're not a fish in a fountain, right? We're Caribbean, yet in this precarious situation of being American, but we're not fully seen as Americans. So for me, part of my identity is like, okay, well, if my mom's country could tell the British Crown that we no longer want to be under your leadership, we could be in the Commonwealth, but we could become self-governing. If this island nation can do it and remain sustainable, of course, every country has its problems, then why can't we? What is stopping us from having that level of self-determination? So those two factors will probably be the two things I would say has shaped my identity the most.
Wow. Janelle, I really love that you leaned into those two aspects of your heritage. So being able to see women and women's leadership being respected and appreciated and celebrated on the Virgin Island side, and also seeing our tiny island nation saying, you know what, Bundis, we want to run our things. We want to run our things, not fully, because as you said, we're still members of the Commonwealth, and there's still a way to go to decolonizing a lot of the mindsets and the way that we do things, and that will come. I feel that it's happening. It's slowly happening, but it is happening. And so you were able to lean into both of those aspects and formulate this wonderful trailblazing, in my eyes, this trailblazing impact on the way that you lead in the Virgin Islands. And I love that you also lent into the historical context, and you spoke about how these women are celebrated in schools and schools are named after them. Because for me, you also started out as an educator, right? And you gained a lot of public experience early on as the Virgin Island Carnival Queen, right? You think I forget? I forget? Right. Okay. So listen, we have celebrated you, Janelle, in so many different ways, in so many different iterations, and I love it. But how did those experiences shape your path into politics? And in what ways have, being a teacher and educator and also your pageantry background influenced the way you now lead? Because I find that people may dismiss the impact of pageantry and the things that the participants, contestants actually have to go through, the discipline, right? All of these things, the autonomy, because sometimes I've seen from, backstage, people are doing things for themselves and being very independent, and they may not have a community supporting them and chaperoning them. But how have your experiences in both those worlds as an educator and a pageant queen helped to shape this present path, your political path?
Well, I mean, one would be love, to lead with love. So in like the pageant world at the time I ran, all of the contestants I ran with, we loved each other. There was this sense of sisterhood and understanding that there's a place for all of us to shine. Even when the pageant ended, and I did have a clean sweep. I won every segment.
Well, remind
but I
them.
learned.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was interesting. This little tomboy who no one addresses just come and did this thing. But I also learned from that, like, to embrace new experiences, to be open to learning, to understand that knowing something means I know nothing at all, and I have to be willing to take constructive criticism, be corrected. I'm not beyond reproach. Be corrected when I make an error. It pushed me out of my limits. So it was a lot of, it shaped my experience, and I'm sure my contestants as well, because among the 6 of us, 4 to 5 of us actually have either a doctor or have doctorate degrees.
Wonderful.
So we were pretty successful in our own right. So I would say one that taught me the power of women, being there to support a woman and fixing her crown. Because oftentimes throughout my political career, I know that women can be each other's greatest enemies as well. I've seen both sides.
Right.
Point. And then also leading into love, when I taught, for you to be impactful as a teacher or educator, you have to actually love the people that you serve, right? Same thing in politics. For me to be a good politician, or I call myself a political scientist, for me to be good, besides a servant leader and transformational leader, it all starts with love. It has to be centered and rooted in love. So when I taught, I realized that I am actually the decisive element in a room, and I actually create the climate of my room, and it's my daily mood when I enter that classroom that makes the weather. I'm the weather woman.
Right.
So I knew at the time that I possessed the power to really make a student's life miserable or joyous, whether I can be a tool of torture or instrument of inspiration, or if I can humiliate, humor, hurt, or heal, humanize or dehumanize, escalate or de-escalate. It was my temperature that did that, in my classroom. So realizing how these young people were sponges, and they may not have came from the perfect backgrounds, but these are our children.
Exactly.
For me, in any society, your greatest natural resource remains the people. And if you don't invest in the people, then you see a society that continues to erode, right? When you look at Hitler in 1933 in Germany, the first thing that dictators do is to dismantle the education system.
Indeed.
So I'm coming from that historical background, and understanding that when you want to conquer people, you begin by taking the mind. You begin to dismantle education. I took great pleasure in molding a generation of, hey, whether or not you agree or disagree, this is how we solve problems diplomatically. We don't always have to lean to violence. At the class, they used to always be suspended. A fight happened, and I know they're out because they were fighting.
Right.
And I made them diplomats. So when they came to class, I forced them to say, okay, you're Senator so-and-so from this neighborhood. And I had them create their own constitution. And if there's a problem, they had to figure out how they were going to amend the constitution. And one of their lines said that the judicial branch, their parents were not allowed to come and flag members of the Congress. So that indicated to me that they wanted their parents to just show up, but make an appointment with me before showing up. And you give them a sense of ownership of their learning.
Yes.
Then they become stakeholders in the process. Yes. So seeing that transformational change in my classroom led me to actually say, okay, well, when I become a public servant, I have to continue to go back to the people who employ me, because I am the employee, they're the employer. Yes. And I have to realize, what is it you want? How can I best serve you? What can I do for you? How can I help you? And that comes just solely from leading from a place of absolute, like, agape type love.
Oh, honestly, Janelle, hearing you speak about, what you actually lent into in terms of, resolving conflict as an educator, because, a lot of your time is spent doing that, not just teaching and not just the academics, but resolving conflicts. And for you to pass on such a wonderful methodology to your students. And I'm sure that they would have carried that forward into their careers and into their communities as well. And you said something there about being a public servant and how do you show up to serve the best interests of your people and to be coming from a space of love. And it was so refreshing for me to hear that, because I often wonder, just in politics in general, not just in the Caribbean, if our politicians, when they get to a certain level, if they actually lose sight of that, that it is a love of the people and serving the people, that is their purpose. That is what you are led by. And it seems to me that what often happens is that politicians get to a certain level and forget that very foundational aspect of their why. And so their why shifts to more of, what do I have to gain from this position? So, how have you actually avoided falling into that statistics of our politicians starting off, with the right intentions, but then ending up more on the self-serving side instead of actually serving the public and their community?
One is a level of self-awareness would be the
Mm-hmm.
first part A.
Mm-hmm.
And then part B would be having a good village. Like, my
Mm-hmm.
grandma would say, show me your company, I'll tell you who you are.
Right.
So self-awareness would be first, because my chief of staff, Simone
Mm-hmm.
Edwards Williams, her and I
Mm-hmm.
get along on nothing. I remember
Right.
walking into the office one day and I had this, in my mind, it was a great idea. And she looked at me
Right.
and I went all excited, and, I have ADHD, so my brain is like all over. When my wheels are turning,
Mm-hmm.
I will make you dizzy. And she
Yes.
knows that. So when I would come to her, she would say, Senator, order of operations first. And I would say, what do you mean? And she'd be like, order of operations, what's the first thing? So she
Mm-hmm.
tones me down, and then
Mm-hmm.
I begin this long rant, and she's like, she looked at me square in my eye. She said, I'm not doing that. I said, what? And she's like, I am not doing that. She said, my job is to protect you. I am not doing that. And
Oh,
I'm not instructing
wow.
anybody in office to do that. So I was, I was pissed. I walk off mad, and I closed my office door, and I had
Mm-hmm.
I had a self party.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to her. She said, she doing it, she doing it. And
Right.
it wasn't an act of insubordination. It was my chief of staff and my staff throughout the time I've served being
Mm-hmm.
okay with telling me that I disagree or
Wow.
no. So the first thing in not falling into the trap is having a tribe around you
Mm-hmm.
where you are able to be around people that are not yes, 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 yes. And you see
Okay.
in our national politics, you see in our
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean politics, where like we're cheering the person on, knowing that they literally just going off the cliff.
Yeah.
So my team is a team that I'm like, one time I was going somewhere, so my chief called me and she's like, what you wearing? I said, black. I pissed. I don't want to be to the hearing today. I don't like how the bill look. I'm mad. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
you wearing black? She said, turn around and change and look sexy today. I said, what? So I went home, I paid my hair, and I put a mint green suit that went viral. And she's
Mm.
like, come in here and act like how you look, Janelle. Go look sexy.
Right.
So
Right.
having people around you where like, you are able to be told no and to keep you in line, like a good
Mm.
leader surrounds themselves with wise counsel. So that's how
Okay.
you don't fall into a trap. And of course, self-awareness is I knew my limitations. I knew
Right.
where I could go, kind of crazy. So I pick a staff, handpicked a
Mm-hmm.
staff
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't allow me to go in that direction. They were able to fill the gaps for me. And then also having self-awareness, they just have to be able to apologize. One time
Right.
I and therapy is also necessary, right? We don't talk about therapy enough. So I started therapy in the
Mm-hmm.
legislature because the way that we judge women in politics or in leadership period or women period was a lot. And I carried a lot of resentment. I was angry at the opposition, the kind of campaign that they ran. And I got to a place in my political career where I'm like, you're gonna tell me this one more time and I'm gonna answer you. So I started to
Mm-hmm.
answer people, and my chief and my staff text me and said, I am tired. I'm done. And one day Simone came and she resigned from my office.
Oh, wow.
I was like, what? So I find myself after work, I was like, okay, you know, I act up. I was like, okay. And then by 5 p.m., I was like, oh no, I lose my chief of staff. So I went to my town, I went by her house, and her husband knows that we have a political marriage. So I said, hey, Jamal, Simone home. And then she came out and we sat on the wall, and I was outside begging back for my chief of staff as if I was begging for my wife. And like, I was trying to save my marriage. But Sylvia looked at me and she's like, I say you'll come to work tomorrow, please, please. So I said to say that you have to be mature enough, have the emotional maturity enough to say, I made a mistake, I messed up.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that because we don't, our leaders don't appear to be human, or we don't, you know, don't have the self-awareness, understanding your limitations, or you pick a staff to fill the gaps, that leads you to going on a very slippery slope of like corruption and manipulation and losing sight of why you're there. And of course, prayer. Every day when I wake up, I would, as I take a shower, I would like, dear Lord, help me to remain honest, keep me honest, be honest. And of course, in the Methodist Church, we say, and other churches, but the benediction is, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart acceptable in your sight, O Lord. So I always am like, the words of my mouth be acceptable in your sight. And that's always like my daily simple prayer, you know. So yeah.
Making sure that you're covered before you step out, right?
Indeed.
All right. And you know what? In listening to you, Janelle, what I'm also, the energy that I'm getting is that you've also created a safe space for your team to say to you, this is not working. I don't agree. I think we should do it this way. You need to go home and change out of that suit. You know, but you've made it safe enough for them to know that they are valued.
Yes.
And what they're saying, their contribution and their input matters. And that is also important. So kudos to you for doing that, because that's integral. You know, your team has to feel valued, because it's when you feel valued that you give your best and that you have the confidence to say, well, respectfully, I disagree. And that's what you've done. So well done you on that. I actually want to roll back to your first term, right? And it was for me very significant because your first term began, as far as I'm remembering, and correct me if I'm wrong, during a time of crisis, right in the aftermath of 2 Category 5 hurricanes, right?
Yes.
So that is when you first began. Hello.
Baptism by fire.
Wow. So looking back, and I know it must have been challenging, what did those early challenges teach you about resilience in leadership?
I think what came to mind would probably be Harriet Tubman. And Harriet Tubman is like, when you see the dogs barking, when you see the light shine, she says, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a at the time we had Irma, and you know, we were called into the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, and I see this massive, you know, ginormous hurricane its way, and I'm like, what? And then it went from like a 2 to a 5, and then the new CNN said 5 plus, and then we were briefed by FEMA, and they're like 5 plus plus. So this thing was so big that it surpassed the levels of a 5, and we were 2 pluses. And I'm like, my God, we have both. This is like, I'm like, okay, we're gonna start this together. We have to come on the opposite side. So one will probably be rooted in faith. So just see it through, and then of course you draw your strength from, you know, some celestial body or being. And at that time, I remember just talking to the people of the Virgin Islands, frightened as ever, you know, but you wouldn't know. Like,
right.
Ask them to hunker down, to remain prayerful, whatever their faith may be. We have a very diverse population. A lot of Palestinians, you have Jews, you have, you know, Hindu. So I said, whatever faith that you are, buckle down. So so for me, my leadership wasn't well, this is how you lead. It was just like the time, you know, for a time such as this. And it just happened. And before you knew it, the storm passed, and it turned into, I chaired the committee of, at the time, Workforce Development, Consumer Affairs, and Culture. So
Right.
it turned into having to speak to national cell phone providers like AT&T and Sprint. I'm like, phones aren't working. You have to give rebates. You can't bill people. And then I was part of a contingency to go to DC. I was the youngest at the time. I had to have
Oh,
been
wow.
30 or 31
Oh,
years
my
old.
goodness.
And I am in the House of Congress before the US Congress, explaining the damage and where we need help most. And, so I was literally just thrust into a leadership position. So it's like God prepares you. He never sits on a path that he has not already ordained and anointed you for. So I think I was already been anointed for that. But when the
Yes.
opportunity came, I just rose to the occasion. And like I said to my earlier question and my answer, love. I love the Virgin Islands immensely. To see seniors in the streets, those who have diabetes, try and find, cold insulin to survive. We had to medevac all of our hemodialysis patients to different states.
Wow.
It was one hell of a coordination that we had happening with our mutual aid agreements and clean debris. We had no power for about 6 to 8 months.
Yes.
It was a lot. And then I went on a boat to Puerto Rico to go back to Puerto Rico for help. And then as soon as Puerto Rico gave us aid, then came Maria 6
Then
days
came
later. And I was just like, what have we done there, Lord? Like,
Yes.
how did we forsake you? What did we do wrong? So yeah, but it was really just the circumstances of the moment that allowed me to silky. It's a matter of survival. You see people, and I have to go find money or find aid for baby. People have babies, but they don't drink Similac. They drink a special kind of milk. And
Yes.
I don't have no children, so I confused as to what milk you want me to send to your child. Like, it was a crash course in just so many things. Taking people out their homes, happening over wires, and it was bad. It was really, I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, that was definitely baptism by fire. Well, in the case of the hurricane, water.
People didn't have any place to see. Saw increase in DP cases happening because families were sharing homes. And then right after the hurricanes of 2017, we were, on kind of shaky footing, and then came the pandemic, which was a whole next story.
Come on now.
Yeah, and it was kind of hard to manage. And then at that time now, they gave me a new committee of disaster recovery and infrastructure. So I had direct oversight over $23 billion federal dollars. So it was a lot to see which tranche of money coming in here, CARES Act 1, CARES Act 2, this tranche of money. Did we use this money appropriately? Having to ask FEMA to lower the levels of bureaucracy. I mean, it was a lot to track. And the office was pretty busy.
Of course. What? What a time. But you brought your community, you brought them through it, Janelle. Senator Janelle, you brought them through it. So well done. Well done. See, that is no easy feat. I mean, I didn't have even a drop in the ocean of those challenges, during the pandemic. I didn't have those type of responsibilities, and I almost lost my damn near mind. Okay. just trying to keep myself, just trying to keep my own head above water. So I don't even understand, even to this day, how the leaders of our Caribbean islands managed to get us through that. And I honestly, I have no criticism, because it was unprecedented. It's something that we've never had to deal with before. And they basically a lot of them did whatever the hell they could do to get us through it. And of course, mistakes were made. Of course.
Yeah, of course.
It was new. It was like, this is what? Shut
and
down.
It was a double, for us, it's a double whammy. Because remember now, we have this funny status, like Angola and other places that are still colonies. So the federal government at one point is called the Stafford Act. So we had to lobby Congress, because the Stafford Act says, okay, if your house is destroyed in Nevis, Shani, and your house is worth 1.5 million, then we're going to give you 1.5 million to rebuild as is. That was a caveat of the Stafford Act, and we had to lobby and say, listen, you can't rebuild as is. We have to rebuild in a more resilient fashion. We don't come back
Exactly.
in 5 years again begging you for the same pavilion.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Oh.
we had to change federal laws. We had MAP, which is a medical assistance program. There was a cliff on it. There was
Right.
cap funding. So we were fighting this federal colonial system while trying to survive locally, and then trying to aid because Tortola is next to us, so they got hit pretty bad.
Yes.
So we were trying to help the BVI out because the British look at the bail on them for a little bit. So we had all of these, and in Puerto Rico next to us, they're looking for help too. So we were it's like nobody could help the other, but we really found strength in our suffering.
Yeah. And as I know I keep on saying it, but well done to you and well done to all the other leaders of our Caribbean nations, because yeah, hurricane, pandemic, earthquake, just come on now. Well done. No one's perfect. No government is perfect. But I also
And they
can
were all
say,
tourism based too, which
exactly.
we have to learn from those
Okay.
lessons. Yeah, we really, and that's
Okay.
my biggest play with the entire Caribbean is, we sell
Just
sun, sand, and sea. But how are we diversifying the economic
that
portfolio?
part.
So that was for me, that was a big lesson. Seeing that
Huge.
for us, we're tourism based on a given day, we have 5, 6 ships in the harbor,
Mm-hmm.
20,000
Mm-hmm.
people on island. And when the storms hit, the taxi men were in a disarray, the
Come
hotels
on now.
people laugh.
Yeah.
Our hotels are just coming back online one by one. So
Mm.
we have an excess of about 15,000 people from the Virgin Islands and Mercy ships to the States because the tourism economy just went,
It collapsed. Yes.
and that's our
Yeah.
main source of revenue.
Yeah. But as you said, it is about diversifying beyond that, and even looking at the template that is often used in the Caribbean, the tourism template, and also diversifying that actual template, right? So there's so
Yeah.
many things. I mean, for Nevis, I know that our government has poured quite a lot into reigniting an interest in agriculture, right? And food sovereignty. And so for me, that's huge. And I thoroughly support and believe in that. But there's so many other different things that we could do in Nevis outside of tourism so that when these natural disasters happen, if, and I hope, that we never have to go through a pandemic again and have that severe lockdown, which impacts people getting in and out of our country. What else are we doing to stay afloat? So there are lessons to be learned, like you said. I'm going to
Yes.
pivot away from that. I'm now going to pivot away from the natural disasters
Not a
and
problem.
pandemics and actually speak a bit on representation and identity, because we did speak briefly at the top of the conversation that you were, fortunate enough to be in the Virgin Islands, to grow up in the Virgin Islands and have women represented in so many wonderful and magical ways, right? But another key aspect, especially when it comes to Black women, of our identity is our hair. And, I have to say that oftentimes I'm like, I'm so tired of being a Black woman and not having to, but feeling the weight of explaining my hair and what I do with my hair, when my hair has nothing to do with, to a degree, nothing to do with the way that I learn, or the things that I like or the things that I'm into. Like, you can't assume because my hair is a certain way that I am a certain way, right? So you're a senator in the Caribbean, proudly rocking your locks. I love. And for me, locks are a powerful symbol of authenticity. I had locks for 8 years myself and decided one day just randomly to shave them off, not because anyone asked me to, but because at the time I felt like I was holding on to a lot of trauma and loss in my locks, and I wanted to free myself of that. So that was my choice. Um, what I want to know is, as a senator wearing your locks, have you ever encountered any challenges around that? And if you have, how have you chosen to navigate and respond?
My challenge with my locks up was actually my inner circle. We both of
Mm-hmm.
us, I could say, Philly, we come from um conservative families,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
mommy is a Kititian that can be very critical,
Lord.
very much like cookie cutter.
Right,
And
right.
sometimes, in some ways, Caribbean moms don't know how they traumatize their children, but because they were
Mm-hmm.
raised like that, then that's the norm, you know?
Right.
So for me, the whole lack thing and the lack problem came from within my inner circle. Because,
Mm.
back then the stigma was that if you have lacks, then you Selassie and you're trying to smoke up the
Mm.
place and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to prevent yourself from getting a good job,
Mm.
ABCDFG. But for
Right.
me, I always I've never had a perm a day in my life. So I went from
Okay.
natural hair to lax.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, too often we tell our black babies that their hair is not good enough,
Yes.
that they have to perm it, and then you're seeing
Mm.
this like lace wig coming up, and it's like
Mm-mm.
we're so uncomfortable with the things that God gave us between
Right.
the surgeries that we're having, the plastic surgery to the way that we handle our hair, and beauty is within
Mm-hmm.
the eyes of the beholder. So to each his own.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my mom also did a really good job. She was very critical of the lack thing,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
she did a very good job of making me feel like I was enough. And so I've never
Mm.
had a palm. So Lux was just my personal identity. This journey I went to an all-white school at PWI.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to permit.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, let me put some lax in my hair because this bad boy in, no crack going in it, no white crack. So we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
just keep it natural, and that's it's worked for me. And I don't really give people a chance to question my identity. I walk
Mm-hmm.
in already knowing that I belong there. Like
Right.
this is my chair, and I
Mm-hmm.
bring value to this room. So I don't
Yes.
care what you say about my hair. And I think that because of that aura that I carry, it's never really questioned
Mm-hmm.
when I enter spaces.
Mm. I love that. I do. And you said something there, Janelle, where you grew up to understand that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think for me, something ticked off in my mind when you said that is that, but so often and for so long, for many centuries, that beholder was from the gaze of the white man and
Yes.
the white woman. And so I think we still have generations of that type of gaze. We have to decolonize basically, because more often than not, our ideals of beauty have come from that. And I think, again, referencing our earlier conversation where you were speaking about the thickness of our lips and, our hips and all these things that are beautiful, but yet we are only now just learning and understanding how beautiful, and that the standard that we have been indoctrinated with from generation to generation has been through the gaze of our enslavers. And so
Yes.
it's taking us some time. So for me to hear you say that growing up at home, that was instilled in you that you are beautiful just the way that you are. I think I had a relaxer for 1 year and then actually went to St. Kitts one day, didn't tell my mother, jumped on a boat, went to St. Kitts, went to her hairdresser in St. Kitts and asked her to please shave it off. Thanks. Right?
Yes.
Because I was not about the upkeep and being in a salon and then not being able to go swimming for like the first few weeks after just getting the NASA. That was imposing on my life, my Caribbean life. And so I quickly got rid of the perm. And my mom had never had one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know why I had a perm. I can't remember if it was her idea, my idea. I don't know, but it didn't last very long. Um, so I'm really, in a sense, it saddened me to hear that the questions came from those around you in terms of, how will this impact people taking you seriously as a senator and so forth. But again, because your mom had instilled you are beautiful just the way you are, you took that and ran with it. And as you said, you walk into rooms and you take up space, and your hair is of no concern to you. So it shouldn't be of any concern to anyone else. And I think that's a very powerful message because as much as we like to believe that there are more of us having had that experience in our families, in our communities, in our chosen families and birth families. There aren't. There's actually more people who have been told the opposite. So the more people like yourself speak of a positive experience, I think that's so important to changing the narrative and to changing how our Black girls, their understanding of what beauty is within our community. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and you see it a lot too. I don't know if you ever read
Mm,
this book by Bell Hooks. She's a
which
a
one?
black feminist, Rock My
Mm-hmm,
Soul, and she
mm,
talks about colorism as this destructive hierarchy within the black community. And like we create this
mm-hmm.
color caste system
Yes.
that has been created by white supremacy and
Mm-hmm.
internalized by black people ourselves.
Yes.
And then Caribbean authors like George Lamming, Palace of George Lamming from Barbados.
Mm-hmm,
I think it's a palace, Peacock to the Palace, I think, and then Sylvia
mm-hmm,
Winter, who talks about the ceremony found and the ceremony must be found. You have
mm-hmm.
all of these black people are talking about this colorism system, and it's really
Yes.
it comes from the mind of shame of darker skin tones and
Yes.
scars of
Yes.
slavery. So you see a lot of bleaching happening in the Caribbean now as well.
Mm-hmm,
I'm like,
mm-hmm.
why are you bleaching? Your black is beautiful. So
So
we
beautiful.
yeah,
Mm.
but we fall into these mainstream looks of exactly what white supremacy, again, a European look, and this is what we should look
Mm.
like. So when a kid has like coolie hair, or you have good hair,
They have
but then
good
you have
hair.
some real naps,
I
you
tell
you
you,
have good hair, and I'm like, what? How do we
what
define
is that?
this? When since when was good hair a thing? So
Yeah,
yeah, even just looking at the roots of all of that, it's rooted in our colonial history.
it is. And if you look at the countries that were colonized, you will see a version of that, whether it's the caste system in India, the paper bag situation in the United States, the colorism right here in the Caribbean. Any country in the world that was colonized ends up with a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've seen Ava DuVernay, someone that Bree and I speak about a lot. Bree is the manager of this podcast. She has a film, Origin, which is based on a book, and I can't remember the books. I think the book was called Caste, actually, which gives the historical context of how that was used to divide and conquer, right? And how
Yes.
it's still alive today. And the film is so powerful, Janelle. So if you get a chance, watch it.
Okay,
Okay.
I will. I will.
It is singularly probably in the last 3 years the most powerful film I have watched. And yes, I will fangirl for Ava every day, but I say this from a completely unbiased perspective. This is a film that every person of color, so not just every Black person, every person of color whose origin is a formerly colonized country needs to watch. There are parts that made me cry. Okay?
Wow.
So when you watch it, I will WhatsApp you and ask you what part made you cry because I'm interested to hear.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. You have my
Okay.
word.
All right. And I will take you for your word. All right. So a lot of your work is centered on youth culture and protecting the Virgin Islands environment. And I know, as you have reiterated, that a lot of that comes from a space of love, right? So,
Hmm.
but I may be asking a question again that might be putting you on the spot. I don't know. Let's see. Which of these initiatives for you feels most personal and why?
I would say the Omnibus Bill, the Women, Children, and Families Act.
Mm,
It was this omnibus legislation that covered all things women.
hmm.
One was women. It one part got gutted because I didn't have the funding of the support of my male colleagues.
Uh-oh.
But Part A of the bill called for mandatory paternity, maternity, and adoption leave,
Okay, yes.
um,
Yes.
paid, because
Yes.
women they don't spend time with their kids at home, their
Hmm.
newborns, and they're rushing back to work, and then they're borrowing time. They're using their sick time to
The
stay home when
holiday,
pregnancy is not a
yes.
sickness.
No, it's not. Hmm.
So I think if we are a nation that cherishes our women, then we should
Hmm.
definitely have some support system in place. The bill also calls for if a female is incarcerated for more than a year, she must have a mandatory physical exam by the doctor. We can't treat our quote unquote detainees like just inhumane.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in most cases, when a woman is in prison, it's not for like a hard crime.
Yeah.
But, it's something silly, fraud or writing a bad check, or
Yeah. From a place of need. Yeah.
And then part three included the banning of corporal punishment in our public education system.
Yes.
I look at how we beat children. I didn't like to get beat. If you beat me, I ain't want to talk to you. And I feel like when two adults beat each other, hit each other, it's assault.
Yes.
But we have this trait from slavery. And people could disagree with me, where if something bad has happened, our first reaction is to do as a slave master did by beating, by whipping. And we teach our men and women to beat. And then of course you have all this toxic masculinity walking around because we don't know how to talk our differences out. And my mom, as children, and my dad, he would talk us and say, well, what did you do? What you do? And he'd reason with us, and by the time we done reason, I'm able to think and own where I went wrong, make a correction.
Yes.
Some level of punishment included. So we banned corporal punishment, and then we were an issue with our birth certificates. When you deliver a baby in the Virgin Islands, then you have to go home with the child and then walk all the way to the Department of Human Services to apply for a birth paper. And suppose his mom has a C-section, so we require the birth paper process to begin in the hospital.
In the hospital, yeah. I'm sorry. I've never actually given birth to a child, but I just made the assumption that that's what happens, but you're telling me it's not. Wow.
Yeah, and then we also noticed that we don't talk about the mental aspect of our young people as well. So the bill requires a physician to, when you go for your regular exam for your child, ages 5 and up, your job as a pediatrician or the primary care physician is to check for any learning disabilities, cognitive issues that child may have. So if there's a issue, you are now mandated to, as the pediatrician, to refer the child to a speech therapist. Or if the child is having some level of trauma, you have to find a psychologist or a counselor. So physicians are now mandated to, when you physically test a child every year for your annual checkup, to check for anything that's cognitive as well.
Goodness.
So that helps us to identify, because if we pretend like our kids are okay, then we're not able to give the right treatment, right?
No, exactly.
Learning disability, or this child has trauma in the home, how do we get them help? But all of these things are overlooked. So the psychological screening begins with the primary care physician. So it is this long bill that really impacts. And then
No, this is wonderful work, Janelle. Come on.
The last part, there's so many parts, but I think the most important part for me too was with school. I saw so many parents when I taught. I'm like, your kids report card in my desk. You plan to come for your child report card. I said, well, I can't take time off from work. They're going to dock me. So the bill calls for every parent has 2 hours per month per child to visit their child's school. So if you have 3 children, you have 6
hours.
So you need to get to your child's school, have your parental conferences, pick your report cards up. So without being penalized. So parents are not utilizing that. So because you want the entire village to be involved in the learning life. So that would be probably the one that was most near and dear to me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, because for those of us outside the VI, we may be aware of your work, but we don't know the full depth and reach of it. So to hear you and to know that you are advocating for children and parents in such a pure manner and such, it just all makes sense. Like, yes, people should be given time off, paid time off to go to their children's school and sit down and really understand what is going. Oh my goodness. And yes, someone shouldn't have to go home with their baby and then have to walk somewhere to go and get their birth certificate sorted. Like, for me, that is just common sense, but you're actually making the impact at a legislative level, which is how things get done.
Yes.
I love it. So, Senator, Senator, as you look ahead now, what is the legacy that you hope to leave, and not just as Senator Sarauw, but as a Caribbean woman, as an island girl, carving out space for others to lead authentically?
My legacy probably would be, well, let me use my
Mm.
active voice, not my
Okay,
passive
then.
voice.
Right.
My legacy is for every young girl to know that she can be whatever she wants to be, and to understand that, like I said, you bring value in a space, you belong in that room, you belong at that table, and if there's no space for you, you make space. To understand that women play an integral part in any society. Women by far are the caretakers, the ones that juggle multiple jobs. Women don't get the opportunity to call in and say, hey, I can take a 1 month vacation from my children because they're annoying me. Don't get the luxury of walking out the home and,
Right.
say, okay, let's take a sick leave today. So for me, my legacy is that women, we have the ability to affect change.
Yes.
We don't have to assimilate. Show up as exactly who we are, own our age, right? Women are judged if you have too much makeup on, no makeup on, if you're feminine enough, if you have children. That whole Me Too movement began way before the Me Too movement. Of course, singing Sandra says, "You could keep my
money.
I will keep my money, right?
Die with my dignity. Da, da, da. Yes.
Yeah. So that, for me, that would be my legacy, that I didn't have to assimilate. I didn't have to change who I was. I came in like a bulldog and I made things happen. And there's a saying, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Indeed.
So for me, I want to continue to make good trouble in whatever capacity I serve in.
And you know what? I'm going to take off my Island Girls Rock hat, just put that aside for the moment, and say, as your cousin, Janelle, right? As a member of this family, I have celebrated you at every iteration of Janelle-ness, whether it's, when I used to be on Facebook, whether it's sharing some amazing feat that you have achieved. And I have always been proud of you. But I think for me, this conversation has been important because even for me, I am getting to understand the reach of your work to another level. So yes, I am always waving my pom-poms for Janelle wherever I am, whether I'm in London, Nevis, whatever, sharing stuff with people. You see what Janelle do? Whatever. Of course I do. I've known you for my whole life. I have memories of you and your brother annoying the hell out of me.
Oh, yes. The good days, right? All part of the growth process.
When I would come over to St. Kitts to go to Carnival and see my boyfriend and my two little cousins there from the VI. Annoying. Oh my God. And for me, I have always been proud of you, but I really have enjoyed this conversation and getting to know Senator, right? And not just cousin. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for showing up for us in all the ways that you do. Thank you for sharing your journey with our Island Girls Rock community. From your roots in the VI to the time you were Miss VI and you sweep the people in pageant and you win all the sections. To, I have images of you on the Mokajumbi stilts, like all of these things, to where you are now, literally changing lives. For me, your story really reminds us that leadership comes in many forms, but showing up, in spaces that haven't always welcomed us is a really powerful act.
And there are two things I want to leave with as well.
Yes.
My dad is a former Vietnam War vet.
Yes.
Serving military. One time there was a vote on the Senate floor, and then they called my name. It said Senator Sarauw, and I walk off the floor, and it said Senator Sarauw not voting. So my dad calls me, and he used an expletive, and he says, "Janelle, what are you doing?" So call me frightened. I said, "Well, Daddy, that's a good bill, and I don't want to offend anybody, so I just walk out. He said, get your lil back in there and cast the vote. So I went back in frightened and I said, I whispered to Mr. President, please change my vote to no. Right. So the reporter, my dad called me after and he said, what's the problem? And I said, well, Daddy, and then give us a long explanation. My father said, let me tell you something. I'm a Vietnam War vet. And he said, in leadership, you take a position. He said, when you stand in the middle, you can shoot from both sides. He said, take a position, Janelle, and justify your position. He said, you want to be liked? He said, if you want to be liked, go sell ice cream. And it stuck with me, right? So I'm like, in leadership, you will not always be liked. You're going to piss people off because people, we don't like change. Right. But always take a position and stand by your position. People will respect you more.
Yes. Thank you, Janelle. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Island Girls Rock podcast. We'll be back soon with more stories, voices, and love from across the Caribbean. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Until next time, walk good.